Your phone dials and you suddenly hear a weird noise. Before you know it, you're inside a government computer system holding classified nuclear weapons research. 6 teenagers armed with nothing but curiosity, home computers and telephone lines managed to infiltrate a hospital, a bank and even the Department of Defense. They didn't do this for monetary gain. They didn't do this for the fame. They just did it to see if they could. This is the untold story of the 414s, America's first online hackers. Money Costs posts a new video every single week. Get involved. It's the early 1980s. Home computers are just starting to become more common. Machines like the Apple II and the Commodore 64 are slowly making their way into basements across the country. The internet as we currently know it didn't exist. Antivirus softwares do not exist. No encryption, no firewalls. All you needed to pull this off was a phone line, a modem, and a little bit of knowledge, and you could theoretically connect to any system across the country. The digital landscape is largely unregulated. Mainframes and mini-computers are being used by a variety of different institutions, including hospitals, universities, and even military laboratories. Most of these systems were, as you can guess, insecure. Many had default passwords like guest or admin, and some just didn't require a password at all. Computers were expensive, inaccessible, and the general assumption was that they were only used by professionals. But at that moment, anyone who had a computer and a telephone had the capability to access any computer/network on the globe. In June 1983, in a quiet neighborhood in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a group of curious teenage boys came together to form a small hacking collective. They called themselves the 414s, a shout out to their local area code, and they quickly became known in the media as teenage criminal hackers. These weren't your average high schoolers, but they also did not fit the typical image of a criminal. Bright, introverted, and utterly obsessed with computers, they spent countless hours on bulletin board systems, studying tech manuals, and swapping secrets amongst themselves on how to infiltrate different computer networks. Their minds were driven by insatiable curiosity and nothing more. They weren't trying to steal money, destroy files, or crash systems. They wanted to learn, explore, and push boundaries, dedicating their time to the true art of hacking. However, through any path of learning and discovery, there will always be a mistake. The 414s launched their hacking activities by using a method called war dialing. With only a computer, a dial-up modem that connected to their telephone line, they ran a program that automatically dials thousands of phone lines, listening for a signal, a screech of a modem on the other end. When a connection was made, they would save the number and attempt to gain access to the system. In today's terms, the equivalent would be something like port scanning, where certain tools scan ranges of IP addresses instead of phone numbers, looking for openings and vulnerabilities. Unlike today's network activity, which is routinely logged and monitored, the 414s operated in a time where dial-up connections were largely unmonitored and remote access was known to only be used by professionals, making it easier for them to explore systems without immediate detection. Once inside, they'd try common default passwords, and if they didn't work, most of the time they would just guess. And it didn't really take much guessing. A modern equivalent of this would be you trying to gain access to your grandma's Kindle. Security back then was minimal. Many systems were designed to trust the user by default. Many institutions had little reason to believe that anyone other than professionals would even try to access these systems, or have the intellect to do so. Clearly, they were very wrong. Using these methods, the 414s gained access to a staggering array of systems: university networks, corporate systems, banks, and even research military labs. One of their targets, the Los Alamos National Laboratory, which conducted top-secret nuclear weapons research. Even though no classified data was actually accessed, they got in. That was enough to embarrass some very important people. They also broke into Security Pacific's bank's internal systems and even explored parts of the US Department of Defense network. However, what really alerted authorities was a breach that occurred at the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, a world-renowned cancer treatment and research institution in New York City, specializing in cutting-edge therapies, clinical trials, and cancer prevention. A member of the group had gained access to their systems, and it's wildly believed that this situation was accidental. He deleted financial data, including billing records, worth over $1.5 million. In today's economy, this would be a staggering $4.5 to $5 million. They hadn't meant to cause this damage, however, they definitely did. And I think it just goes to show, however pure your intentions may be, curiosity can lead you to a place where you can get into some serious trouble. You can go from being seen as harmless teen hackers to a public threat very quickly. Not because you meant any harm, but just because you pushed things a little bit too far. After the Sloan Kettering incident, hospital administrators reported the network hack, and the small group now had the attention of the FBI. At the time, there were no federal laws specifically targeting hacking. There was no cybercrime unit like we have today. Investigators were essentially working blind until they eventually stumbled upon a mistake made by the 414s. The 414's level of curiosity led them to revisiting systems that they had previously infiltrated, and without a way of consistently hiding these phone calls, a digital trail was eventually formed. The FBI partnered with telephone companies like AT&T to trace the incoming calls. They began to find a correlation between modem access logs and long-distance phone calls. Slowly but surely, they traced the activity back to Milwaukee, and on one morning in July 1983, the FBI made their move. Agents arrived at the home of Neil Patrick, one of the founding members of the 414s. Other members were also raided that day, leading the FBI to seize multiple computers, modems, floppy disks, and much more. When questioned, the teens obviously instantly confessed. The majority of them were cooperative, and even surprised that what they had done was even being considered as a crime. They didn't see themselves as hackers, they saw themselves as explorers. Within days, the press caught wind of the story. The media ran wild. Teenage hackers break into government systems was the kind of headline that sold papers and sparked national panic. The Newsweek cover featuring Neil Patrick's face and the ominous title, Hackers at the Gate, turned him into an overnight celebrity, or villain, depending on how you perceive it. Accompanied with his photogenic features, he was well-spoken, intelligent, and seemed to be an average high school teenager. For the media, these characteristics were a headline goldmine. He was interviewed on The Phil Donahue Show and was invited to testify before Congress. Considering the amount of times the word is vomited into headlines today, for most Americans, it was the first time that they were hearing the word hacker. And suddenly, it wasn't just a nerd word for computer enthusiasts, it became an invisible digital threat lurking beyond a computer screen or at the end of a phone line. In 1983, the film War Games was released, a movie about a teenager who nearly triggers World War III by hacking into a military computer. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. For the average person, fiction and reality were starting to blur, making the impact of the 414's story even more significant. If you read a story like this today, you can expect that the consequences were fairly serious. However, the 414s faced relatively minor consequences. Most were charged under state laws with misdemeanor offences like computer trespass. Since most were underage and first-time offenders, they were given probation and community service. But their actions would set off a chain reaction that would change the world forever. The US government quickly realised it had a major blind spot, not just in cybersecurity, but in the American legal system too. There were no clear laws for dealing with people who broke into computer systems, and no solid plan in place to stop it happening again. That all changed in 1986, with the passing of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the first major federal law to make unauthorized access to protected computers a crime. It's been amended multiple times since and continues to evolve, with new cases of cybercrime happening on an almost daily basis. But its origins trace back directly to the wake-up call delivered by the 414s, a small hacking group whose actions were so impactful they helped inspire the creation of new computer crime laws. Personally, I find it really difficult to believe that their only intention was exploration. I think they may have started with that mindset, obviously, but I think deep down everyone has the desire to be noticed. Even if it wasn't their primary goal, I think with their level of intellect, they were very aware that the systems they were accessing, they shouldn't have been accessing. Yet, they just continued to do so anyway. After things settled down, Neil Patrick largely kept a low profile and chose a more private life. Unlike some of his peers, he didn't go into IT or cybersecurity. Details about what he's up to now are mostly actually unknown, and it's unclear whether he ever returned to hacking at all. And as far as we know, none of the 414s ever became repeat offenders. Still, it's likely that the lessons they learned during their brief time of cybercrime would have not only helped the companies that they once infiltrated, but also guided them in hopefully a more positive direction in life. The story of the 414s is more than just a footnote in hacker culture. It's the origin point of something bigger. They were the first to show the world that a teenager with a home computer could break into places that they were not supposed to be in. Places people thought were untouchable. They were, and still are, proof that technology and intelligence will always outpace legislation. That curiosity can be as powerful and as dangerous as any weapon. Maybe there's someone out there right now looking at a computer screen, typing away on their little keyboard, thinking, how deep does that rabbit hole really go? Unlike the 414s, today's hackers often don't have the same innocent curiosity, unfortunately. With so many hacker groups operating currently and money playing such a massive role, the risks are infinitely greater than before. Thank you so much for watching. I make weekly videos just like this one, mostly documenting weird internet crime, and yeah, so if you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy this video on the screen here. Yeah, YouTube thinks that you might enjoy it, so give it a click. If you're on your TV, get your remote out, just go up once and then click it, give it a watch, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Enjoy.